Those that did not want to ride could pay to use a stationary cannon from the outside. Maintenance employees attempting to fix broken down tanks were subject to fire from the rowdy guests, making the attraction a nightmare to work at. The other two land-based Motor World attractions were the Lola cars and the Super Go-Karts. Both of which were kart race attractions. The Super Go-Karts were driven on a small loop. The karts themselves were designed to max out at 20 miles per hour, but the employees found that sticking a tennis ball with a governor device allowed the cart to go as fast as possible, with the new maximum speed being around 50 miles an hour. Head-on collisions frequently sent guests to the hospital, and the fumes from the engines overwhelmed riders at times. The Lolo cars were mini open cockpit race cars driven on a longer track, and they cost
Speed Racer design pretty cool.
Their maximum speed could also be tampered with by park employees.
Actually,
These were also used after hours by the workers, sometimes being
noodles.
taken off the track and driven on the nearby highway. There were two water rides in Motor World. The super speedboats were driven in a small circle around an island in a pond that also had a large population of snakes in it. The guests would often attempt to bump nearby boats, as if they were on Motor World's other water attraction, bumper boats. These were boats placed in a small pool, and were designed to withstand guests crashing into one another. These were known to leak gasoline, which once required a guest to be examined after too much fuel leaked on their skin. The boats were also incredibly small, and riders with long legs had to position their feet off the side of the boat.
This place does look fucking
this led
awesome,
to
though,
injuries
to be
and bone
fair.
fractures after collisions. Finally, Motor World had two airbase attractions. One was Space Shot, which was a typical drop tower ride and was one of the safest rides at the park, given it was only open for Action Park's last operating year. The second air ride was another upcharge attraction, Slingshot, which was also fairly safe. This ride was a common amusement park and carnival ride, in which guests were shot up on two bungee cords and flipped upside down as they flew through the air. There's no doubt that Motor World had its dangerous attractions, but this is just the beginning of what Action Park has in store. Another section of the park was...
I mean, to be fair, that part of the park looks awesome.
Sometimes labeled the Alpine Center.
These
included the aforementioned Alpine slides, as well as a bungee jump titled the Snapple Snap Up Whippersnapper Ride. Originally having 2 jump stations and then later 4, guests could jump off the tower for an additional fee. A skate park also had a short run at Action Park. It was poorly designed, as it was surrounded by concrete and had uneven edges, which led to many injuries during its existence. Interestingly, Action Park also had an attraction entitled the Action Park Gladiator Challenge, partially based off of the popular American Gladiators TV show. This included obstacle courses and jousting matches against the Action Park.
This sounds like the best park of all time.
Action Park had its own monorail called the Transmobile. This went to the Ski Lodge, the Alpine Center, and to Motor World.
What the fuck?
So far, Action Park has proved to be dangerous, but where are the absolutely terrifying rides? Where are the rides that are so insane that their mere existence is unbelievable? Moreover, where are the water slides?
Yeah, if they just got rid of Waterworld, everything else seems perfect.
This section the action in Action Park. Waterworld had it all. It was home to the Tidal Wave Pool, a 100 feet by 200 feet pool that could hold anywhere between 500 and 1,000 people. The pool's floor was slanted, and the further a guest went in it, the deeper it got. Waves went 20 minutes on, 10
There's
minutes
nothing
off,
more
and they could
uncomfortable
reach
than like a communal pool like that.
This was challenging for swimmers
Piss
of all
and
skill
shit all
levels,
over the place
as
in the
pool
water.
was hard to read, and the fresh water was more difficult to swim in than salt water. A dozen lifeguards were on duty at the pool, and they would have to save around 30 people on a busy day. The Tarzan Swing was a heavily advertised attraction in which guests would swing on a 20-foot cable over a pool. This spring-fed pool was so cool that lifeguards would have to rescue guests that could not swim after the shock of the cold water. This was also a popular attraction for men to pull down their pants or women to pull up their tops for the line of people to swim. The appropriately named Aqua Scoot gave guests a scoot, with which they would slide down in a
That's what I want to do, show my dick to a bunch of kids at a water park, yeehaw.
They would skip across. If the guest was not in an ideal position, it would get caught under the water, sending the rider crashing forward. There were originally a pair of these slides, each 30 feet long, but a third slide was eventually added. The diving cliffs had 2 jumping bases, one 23 feet and the other 18 feet tall, with the pool below being 16 feet.
This park is fucking nuts. It's like something I'd make in Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Which resulted in collisions.
I'll just have a 500-foot dive into shark-infested water.
No one was at the bottom of the pool. The super speed water slides, also known as Geronimo Falls, were a pair of high-speed vertical water slides. One of them was steeper than the other, and both were dangerous. Near these was the safer Kamikaze, which was a more traditional tube slide. The kayak experience was pretty self-explanatory, and used underwater fans to simulate water rapids.
And absolutely alligators.
But that goes without saying at this point. A similar ride, the Roarin' Rapids, allowed guests to ride in a 1 or 2 person raft down a similar river. The Surf Hill had riders slide down a multi-laned, multi-hill slide on a mat.
God damn,
riders could
that seems
easily
nuts!
Cross over to the adjacent lanes and cause collisions. And the 7th hill, nicknamed the Backbreaker, had an additional hump that would send riders flying.
Oh, that's the one, yeah!
The Colorado River Ride was
Fuck yeah!
Ride, this time
holy
up to
shit!
4 people, and it went through the wooded area of the park. At one point, the riders would come to a fork in the river and had to choose between two paths.
The
first
path
path took guests under a waterfall and a series of tunnels. The second path included a waterfall and another fork, with one path being steeper than the other. The ride also included a foot-tall jump that would allow riders and their raft a short airtime. The Aerodrome was a skydiving simulator that caused injuries when guests would try to stop their falls with their arms. Waterworld also had a variety of other typical water slides and pools that were less notable, but there's one in particular that has yet to be mentioned. This is the attraction that made Action Park the most infamous, the Cannonball Loop. A tubed water slide with a vertical loop similar to that of a roller coaster. It was rumored that during the testing of the attraction, Mulvihill offered $100 to employees who were willing to try it. Test dummies apparently came out of the loop without their heads. When it was opened, guests would be weighed, hosed down, and given a set of instructions to decrease the possibility of injury. A hatch was added to the top of the loop to assist stuck riders that could not make it all the way through the slide. Many guests that completed the loop would come out at the bottom, suffering from bloody noses or other injuries, either from hitting the top of the loop or the impact on the way down. The Cannonball Loop is indicative of a larger issue with Action Park, as many of the other attractions were poorly crafted by designers that were less than engineers, and most were designed to minimize cost rather than maximize safety.
And maximizing fun. Like, these rides look fucking cool.
Alcohol at many of the convenience stands, often to minors.
These are some Imagineers.
Brewery near Motorworld. Many of the guests visiting the inexpensive park came from low-income areas, and did not have the necessary swimming skills to navigate some of the attractions and pools. Action Park also heavily marketed to Spanish populations, but there were no translations or translators for the guests when they visited, so explaining safety instructions was virtually impossible.
You already know that Action Park has the most innovative and exciting rides, the Alpine Slide, Grand Prix race cars, and spectacular water rides. But Action Park means more than just great rides. It means super live shows, fantastic summer festivals, and scrumptious food and drink, including an authentic German brewery. Come to Action Park.
Honestly, Action Park has it all.
Only thing that's great. Labor Day.
Only 6 deaths were recorded here. Reopen.
The majority of those employees
I wouldn't go, but the existence makes me happy.
Handle the rowdy guests at the park. So on any given day, you could have an overcrowded water park filled with drunk teenagers that couldn't swim, riding shoddily built attractions supervised by teenagers that may or may not be able to communicate with them. It is no wonder what happened
Prime
next.
Exotic and Resub Knife and Jeff in the Prime Break.
On July 8th, 1980, a male employee was riding the Alpine Slide when his cart went off the track. He hit his head on a rock during the crash, killing him. He was only 19. 2 years later, on July 24th, 1982, a 15-year-old guest was overcome by the waves of the tidal wave pool and drowned. On August 1st, a mere week later, a 27-year-old guest was riding the kayak experience when he was trying to re-enter his kayak after falling out. When doing this, he made contact with the live wiring that powered the underwater fans. The electrocution sent him into cardiac arrest, and he passed after being rushed to the hospital. 2 years later, in 1984, a guest died on the Tarzan swing after a heart attack, supposedly due to the unexpected shock from the cold water. That same year, on August 27th, a 20-year-old drowned in the tidal wave pool. And on July 19th, 1987, another guest drowned there, giving it the nickname the Grave Pool. These deaths are tragic, and often overshadowed.
Yeah, that's the worst place to die, surrounded by other people's piss.
Enough, Action Park was able
your sarcophagus becomes a literal toilet.
Other injuries,
at a communal tidal pool.
And also
Holy
the lax
shit.
regulations New Jersey had for amusement and water parks. Great American Recreation was even able to expand the Action Park brand to other parts of the country, opening Pocono Action Park in Tannersville, Pennsylvania in 1980, and Action Mountain in Pine Hill, New Jersey in 1984.
Get wild. Get wet. Action Mountain. Feel the thrill as you zoom
Fuck!
into the black hole.
I want to get wet and wild. Let's fucking go!
While the kids play in our fun-filled kiddie area, cool off in our huge swimming pool.
Thanks for Brian, Tim, and
race
Resub
around
Shrekery.
the Grand Prix track. Get wild.
Hey, appreciate it, Jan. Thanks to Brian, Pit fan.
At Action Mountain in Pine Hill, New Jersey. It's awesome.
Pocono Action Park had many repeat attractions as Action Park, and was closed in 1991. Action Mountain ran into some financial difficulties with the IRS and the town it was located in, and was closed in 1986.
Before WoW, he was just doing backstrokes at Action Park.
While Action
Tidal
Park
Pool.
and Mulvihill were able to avoid lawsuits with many of the accidents and deaths, the 2 deaths in 1984 stemmed cases that rightfully plagued the park with a variety of legal problems. Mulvihill eventually pled guilty to 5 charges of insurance fraud. He and his associates claimed that the park saw over 1 million guests a year, and therefore the death toll was comparatively low. The local ER, on the other their hands said that they would have to treat 5 to 10 guests on some days. In response to the high amount of guests visiting the hospital, Action Park bought
What are you complaining about? You're making a lot of money off that.
Despite all of these
5 to 10 guests a day?
the downfall of Action Park wouldn't come until 1996, and it was actually due to Great American Recreation's financial issues and not the park itself. On September 2nd, 1996, Action Park ended its final season, still with the hope that it would reopen the next year. However, Great American Recreation's bankruptcy made it impossible for Action Park to continue operations, so it didn't reopen. After this, the ski resort and Action Park were handed from investor to investor, undergoing renovations for 2 years before reopening in 1998 as Mountain Creek.
No!
Safety was a priority under this management, and a valiant effort was put forth to distance Mountain Creek from Action Park's reputation. However, in 2010, Mountain Creek underwent a bankruptcy of its own, and the water park and ski resort was sold to the Mulvihill family. 2 years after this, in 2012, Eugene Mulvihill passed away, and his son Andrew Mulvihill took over ownership of the park. 2 years later, in 2014, Mountain Creek was rebranded back to Action Park. The park reopened many of its classic attractions, and started construction on new, terrifying ones. The Skycaliber was another attempt at a 360-degree vertically looping water slide, although it used technology to enhance safety. From my knowledge, it is yet to open at the park, and there's almost no information on its status. The new Action Park tried to use nostalgia to draw guests back for 2 years, before in 2016 it was renamed back to Mountain Creek, in order to once again get away from the negative connotation of Action Park. Early this year it was announced that Johnny Knoxville would be producing, writing, and starring in a film inspired by Action Park, but it was not shot on location. Death is heartbreaking, especially in environments designed for happiness and joy. Despite 6 people losing their lives there, Action Park is not remembered for its death toll. It is remembered for and by the kids that grew up with it and survived it. It is seen as a place where the quote-unquote popular and brave teens hung out. The fact that it was referred to as Traction Park or Class Action Park doesn't matter, because its inherent
That's a cool name, Class Action Park. That's pretty good.
The burns, bruises, and the fractured tibias were a rite of passage for its former guests.
Yeah. Do we have any Action Park survivors in the chat?
Roller coaster at Disney in California or at Universal in Florida? Well, welcome to Vernon, New Jersey. Were you able to survive Action Park?
You going to bed? I'll say goodnight in a sec. That was super fucking cool. It makes me want to go to Action Park. God damn.
I'm built differently. I'm built